and welcome back to The Movies Made Us Do It. Me and Matt are back. How are you, Matt?
I'm pretty good, sir. How are you?
I'm all right. Yeah, I'm looking forward to this one.
Yeah.
I'm gonna say I think right off the bat, there are definitely criticisms of this film.
Oh yeah.
And very valid ones.
Mm-hmm.
But I fucking love this movie.
Yep, me
and
too.
I don't care. But your criticisms are valid.
Yeah.
But
I think the biggest criticism against it is
acting.
that it's well, one, at least two of the actors,
two specific actors,
yeah, chosen,
and actors who turned out to be pretty good ultimately. Just not in this movie.
The others are things like it's more, style over substance, which I don't completely disagree or agree with, because I think it's certainly one of the most stylish movies ever made.
It is. It comes across, rewatching it for this. It's very artsy. It feels like way more artsy than I think people were expecting from a Hollywood blockbuster movie. You know,
that was Coppola's point. He wanted it to be that. He wanted it to be artsy.
He succeeded.
He wanted it to be like none of the other Draculas,
and he's done it.
Completely, yeah.
100%.
That. I mean, I know that a lot of people as well, a lot of Dracula purists hate the love angle.
Sure.
And you can definitely argue that it's more of a gothic romance than it is a horror movie.
It is.
But I have no problem with that at all.
No. In some ways, it's closer to the book than a lot of others. So
that's the thing. It's probably one of the most faithful adaptations of the book without being the faithfulest adaptation of the book.
Yes.
It's one of those rare ones that it certainly has the three, the trio of suitors.
Yes.
How many versions have got, even one of them?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Most of the time, they usually focus on Jonathan and Van Helsing, and pretty much all the others. If they're not, their parts aren't, halved or merged. Poor old Quincy. I think Quincy's probably usually done the worst.
Yeah.
I think there are very few Dracula movies that actually have Quincy in. Dr. Stewart usually gets sort of devolved to being the old doctor.
Literally, I run the asylum and that's it.
Yeah, and he wanders in and out every now and again.
Yeah.
Holmwood usually gets...
He's usually there to look at Lucy and go, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Where's Van Helsing?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean, look how... one that we love well, certainly I love the most, the Hammer one, completely reorders who they are, who Lucy is.
Well, Mina and Lucy just get combined, right?
Exactly.
So,
I mean, people get completely moved around, and this doesn't do that. It doesn't any of that. It has all the characters in their right place. It has it's got, for the most of it, completely well ordered, except for the love angle. And some people, that's just too much. Yeah,
which is fair. Where did you see this in the cinema? I'm assuming you did. 92.
Exactly, no.
Oh, really?
Well, it was an 18, and I wasn't 18 yet.
That is a problem.
A year off. And back then, I was a good boy, so I didn't. I did try and sneak into I was always one of those, like, I'd love to go to the cinema and sneak in to watch horror movies. I never sort of dared. I just wait till they cut on video. My parents were fine with me watching videos.
Yeah, same.
I just watched it on, but I do remember playing the game.
Oh God.
The sort of which was ropey as fuck.
Yep.
And I remember reading
Mortal Kombat, the Mortal Kombat engine. It was terrible. Not designed to be a platformer as Mortal Kombat.
No,
not known for platforming.
No, not really. I mean, there are worse games, but
yeah.
And I remember reading, I'm pretty sure Fangoria did a really big piece on it, and I remember just sort of eagerly waiting for it to come out on video, because it's like, I need to see this movie, because
totally.
it looks... I mean, the trailers were so amazing.
Yeah. And the stills, I like, talking about Fangoria, you see the stills, you're like, oh my god, this film looks amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we're going to talk about the costumes and stuff, but just seeing the pictures of him in that fucking armor, it's like, what is that? What have they done there? Why? You just wanted to see the movie. I was so excited for it. So yeah, as soon as it came out on video, I was like,
I think we're the same there. I first a rental for me too. So yeah. Well, let's get into it. Speaking of armor, and I believe it starts in 1462. We get that incredible score. Really love the score.
I'm gonna mess his name up. I'm afraid, but it's Wieleszek Kalar.
Right.
He's a Polish composer. What a soundtrack!
It's instantly recognizable and very memorable. I absolutely love the theme.
Yeah.
So basically, Constantinople has fallen to the Turks, right? Who are invading.
Yeah, Turks.
And old Gary Old Man,
Gary Old Man,
Prince Dracula, he's going to do battle against the Turks. So he says goodbye to his wife, and this is one of those movies that does the whole like, reusing cast members in the past and their future selves look identical.
Yeah.
Obviously, that is needed for Dracula and for Elizabeta, who becomes Mina's her.
Yeah.
But it is weird how many times Anthony Hopkins turns up in this. Including later on doing the voiceover of the ship captain, which I find bizarre.
That was odd. I must admit, I did find
choice.
Very strange. It almost feels like, I can't be bothered to get him.
He'll do.
Anthony's got an amazing voice. Just get him to do it.
He does, because at the start you have obviously Anthony Hopkins doing the narration of all of this, right?
Yes.
Now that makes sense because it's almost like Van Helsing is telling the story or whatever.
Yeah.
But when you get to the ship captain, you're like, what? Why is he also the ship captain?
Yeah, I guess it's just my guess. Again, like the Van Helsing, I suppose it's supposed to be. It is Van Helsing reading the logs. Sort of thing.
Oh, maybe that makes more sense. It's the way that it's delivered though makes it sound like he is the captain.
Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe that's what it's meant to be. Maybe it just comes across a little different. But anyway,
that's one of the weird things about the book is an oddly structured book anyway, because it's all logs and diary entries and wax cylinder, records and things like that. So it's weird anyway. So it's structured so they kind of sort of did stuff for that. With the Lucy, not Lucy, Mina, doing the typing and all that sort of stuff. Which again is really cool.
It is very cool. So anyway, this battle against the Turks seems like a hopeless battle. And Elizabeta, I think, his wife or bride, basically is certain that he's going to die, and I think he's pretty certain he's probably not going to make it out of this one anyway. But he's like, well, I'm going to do my duty to God and country, and off I go. And he dons the red armor, which you were referring to just now, which looks really tacky, apart from when it's lit in this movie, and it looks amazing.
Oh my god!
It's all about the lighting.
Have you seen the making of stuff?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh my god! It looks and sounds just like it. Well, it is plastic.
Yeah, but with the right lighting, it looks amazing.
It looks amazing. And the thing is that also it was like every time he moves.
Oh god, I can imagine the fucking noise.
Pings off.
Yeah.
He can barely move in it. And it just kept falling apart.
But it looks awesome.
but it's so fucking cool looking.
It's the difference between a real prop and a movie prop in normal light versus studio light.
Yeah, and that's Eiko Isoka designed that, who is a Japanese.
It's a gorgeous design. It's almost like muscles.
It's the muscles, isn't it? It's amazing. And the weird thing is, if you see the storyboards, on the storyboard pictures, he's wearing like a wolf's head helmet.
Really?
Yeah, it's like a full-on wolf's head helmet.
You kind of see it in the helmet, actually. It's kind of got that shape.
Yeah, it's got that sort of like weird muscly wolf head, which has got ears and everything. I think even that some people object to, but I
love it.
It's so stylized.
It looks so cool, and this whole opening. So he obviously kisses his bride goodbye.
Yep.
And off to war, and we get this wonderfully silhouetted action sequence. They almost look like it almost looks animated in places.
It's puppets. It's literally.
Is it actually puppets? I wasn't sure.
It's all done in the background and the foreground and stuff, and it's done in layers. And it's literally just the background. The back rows are all just shadow puppets.
Because the great thing they do is they then cut to Gary Oldman as coming out of the silhouette. Mm-hmm. So it's almost like you go from the puppets into the real person, and it is seamless, and it looks incredible when the light kind of hits his face, and he's like suddenly you see kind of half of his face. So he's successful against the Turks, and he puts them all on pikes as any good Vlad the Impaler should.
Exactly.
Although he's not known as Vlad the Impaler here, he's Dracula, but he shares some similarities.
Well, I think this is again, Coppola wanted to seriously cement the idea that Dracula was Vlad Tepes, which I don't think Stoker ever really intended.
No,
he was certainly
inspired.
Inspired and influenced by
as much as you could be inspired by someone like that.
Yeah, he certainly wouldn't have, purposely made those things, but people have done it for years, and I think it cemented it so much that people, now think that that's what he intended. And I've got really no problem with that. Is such. It's just fucking cool in this movie.
Yeah, but vengeful Turks decide to shoot an arrow into the castle, claiming that Dracula has died. And Elizabeth is like, "All right, I'll just believe this arrow that's been shot through the window." I'm just going to take this random arrow that's been shot through my window at face value. And it's not been delivered. It's not been delivered by some official or a member of the army or anyone. It's literally an arrow has been shot through my window with a little note written on it in Turkish handwriting saying
someone threw a brick through your window.
Why did they decide to write this letter in Turkish? I don't understand. But anyway, apparently my husband is dead. So she jumps out, and I love the shot of her falling. Actually, I know it's really, again, it's very artsy. It's not very realistic, but it looks incredible.
This is another thing about the Coppola stuff. So like I said, he wanted to do completely his own thing. He wanted to have this so separate from all the other Draculas.
Yeah.
Weirdly, his favourite Dracula is Carradine.
Oh, really? Okay.
Is it Carradine? No.
Yeah, Carradine was one of the later Draculas.
Carradine?
He was in House of Dracula, I think.
It was certainly one of the weirder ones that I just thought, okay.
Yeah, Carradine was one of the later Draculas in the Universal run.
But so he wanted to, he didn't want the suit, so that's why he hired the Ahsoka to do the costumes.
Oh, the costuming,
and he wanted, his inspiration was Cocteau, and he wanted all these. He had all these paintings and stuff that he had ideas for, and he wanted practical effects that they could have done at the time.
Right.
And the guy that was sort of hired to be the sort of effects guy was like, no, you can't do that. You need digital effects. You need to do this. And he was like, no, I want to do this. And he was like, no, you can't do that without spending lots of money. And he basically fired it and gave it over to his son, Roman Coppola, to do.
Fair play.
So his son, basically, who apparently was like a magician, he liked to do magician stuff. So he had all these ideas for tricks and things that.
Well, they obviously worked, because for the most part, this movie really holds up.
Yeah, it really does. And I think that's one of the reasons why it holds up so well, because the stuff they use is not terrible early 90s digital effects. It's really great, painting, paintings and backlit, back projected things. You know, really amazing stuff that he wanted to do. And even the cinematographer was like, I don't understand what you're doing here. I don't quite get what's going on.
I'll just go with it.
But I'll do it anyway.
Yeah,
sort of thing. And yeah, it was just absolutely amazing, because apparently he read what so he was Coppola was apparently one of those camp like kids camp controller guys.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And apparently he used to read Dracula to the kids.
All right.
So he loved the book. And Winona Ryder, who pulled out of Godfather 3,
yeah,
because she was going to play the daughter, but that his own daughter played in the end. For various reasons, she pulled out, but she didn't, want him to be upset with her. And she said, I've got this script for Dracula that I'd like you to have a look at. And he was like, I think initially it was like, oh god, somebody with a script. And then it was like Dracula. He's like, okay.
Yeah, Dracula's a pretty big deal.
So it was Winona Ryder that brought it to him.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
And he completely on board. And he was in a really bad place at this time as well, because he'd made One from the Heart, which I don't know if you've ever seen One from the Heart.
I don't think I have, actually.
It's a musical. It's
right.
a really weird movie. It's got Terry Garr and Frederick Forrester in it, and Natasha Kinski and Harry Dean Stanton, and it's a musical. It's a really weird little musical, and the music's done by like Tom Waits and stuff. And it completely fucking flopped. It ended up, I think it was supposed to be on a small budget, but it ended up being a 26 million budget, and the distribution company panicked and pulled, so he had to make another deal with a different company.
Right.
And it completely fucking tanked, and it ruined him. It bankrupted him.
Oh.
So he agreed to make Godfather 3, which he said he would never do.
No, make a bit of money.
To make money back, and he agreed to do this as well. And so he was in a very unhappy place. And weirdly, this was so successful, and he made so much money back that he then started to do the stuff with the winery and all that sort of stuff, which is how he made all his money back.
Right, interesting.
And why he did he went into sort of other things. He didn't want to continue to be a film director that was just doing movies. Unless he was really passionate about it. So this one was he was quite unhappy when he was doing this movie. But yeah, I recommend One from the Heart. It's a really weird, interesting movie.
I'll give it a go.
Yeah.
So Elisabetta flings herself into the river. Don't know what happens to her. The film kind of implies that she drowns, but she's also bleeding from the mouth. So it's really weird.
You would have thought.
I'm assuming she hit some rocks on the way down. But...
Yeah, I mean, when she's laid out in front of the cross,
there's water there, but she's also bleeding from the mouth.
She's drowned. She's basically supposed to invoke visions of Ophelia.
Okay, yeah.
And I think that he wanted to conjure up. Do you know the not William Waterhouse, Millais, the Millais painting of Ophelia? It's fucking gorgeous. It's one of my favorite paintings. He wanted to invoke that, so that's why she looks the way she does. She's like this drowned, heroine.
Yes, the blood from the mouth confuses me, but it's fine.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's just...
It looks cool.
To make her look dead.
Yeah,
she's definitely dead.
There's blood from the mouth, they're dead. Yeah, she just bit her lip on the way down.
Yeah.
But, of course, the prince is, on the battlefield, and he kind of is overcome by this feeling that something's wrong, and he says her name, and he rushes back thinking, he knows something's happened. And he gets back, and they've brought her to the throne room and just dropped her there. She's covered in water, dead, and
it's in the chapel. In
the chapel, yes. And the bishop thinks this would be a wonderful time,
to
start saying that her soul's damned and she's going to hell.
Took her own life. She's damned.
It's like Bishop. I think he knows, but now is not the time to be saying this, because he's still got his sword and he's a very angry man. He's just impaled like fucking 100 Turks. Are you sure that now is the time in front of his dead wife to be telling him that she's going to hell, by the way? But yeah, so he renounces God, and he basically says that if God let his wife die while he was defending his church, then he's going to renounce God and he's going to renounce the church. And of course, the bishop, played by Anthony Hopkins, is horrified as Dracula stabs the cross with his sword. And it bleeds. It bleeds, and Dracula drinks from the blood, proclaiming that he will be. Sorry.
The blood is the life.
The blood is the life, yes, and that he'll be reborn after death with powers of darkness. It's such a cool opening. It's amazing.
So great.
It is amazing. And then time jump after the credits, because we get the bloody credits. Lots of blood splash, which I always thought was a bit of a Hammer thing. A bit of a Hammer reference, maybe. I don't know. Maybe not. It always reminds me of that first Dracula movie, the first Hammer one.
Yeah, the blood on the tomb.
On the tomb, yeah. So we go to 1897 in England, and we meet Jonathan Harker, played by Keanu Reeves, who cannot do an English accent very well at all.
So now here we get to the worst part of the movie.
I think him and Winona Ryder. Both of whom I really like as actors now. But fuck me, in this film, especially I think Keanu Reeves is worse than Winona, actually. But they're both pretty awful in this film.
Winona sometimes
she's okay, and other times she's terrible.
Gary Oldman, I think maybe she's slightly better when she's filming. And when her scenes with
Keanu, they're so bad,
are really excruciating. Coppola thinks that with Keanu, the problem was that he was trying too hard.
You kind of get that feeling, don't you? Actually,
it certainly feels that, and bless him. I've seen reviews where they just say it just feels like he's gonna say "dude" at the end of every sentence. It
does sound like fucking he's just like Ted trying to do an English accent.
It really does. Bless him. And like I said, with all the will in the world, I love Keanu Reeves. He's fucking awesome.
Me too. And Winona, I really like Winona Ryder as an actress as well.
Coppola wanted young upcoming actors, and that's who's apparently, I think initially he wanted Christian Slater to play it, and he said no.
Right.
So they chose because he literally was the sexy up and coming star. So he picked him.
Oh, fair enough.
You can see why he picked him.
Absolutely.
It's just one of those things. I don't. Maybe he should have picked a young English actor. Don't know, but
I don't know.
He in my opinion, he is the worst thing in the movie.
It's between him and Winona, but I think he is better. He is the worst.
I mean, Winona had to really be in it because she bought him.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It's like it makes so much more sense why she's in it now. You've told me that. But anyway, Renfield, the poor bugger. He's. I feel like we do this. We've done Dracula. If you include 2 times we did Nosferatu in the same episode.
Yes.
We've done this story so many times now. It's really confusing. But anyway, poor Renfield. He
played by the amazing Tom Waits.
Oh, he's amazing in this, isn't he?
I love Tom Waits anyway, but he's so good.
He went to Transylvania to meet Count Dracula to close the sale of 10 properties in London, which Dracula was going to purchase, and he came back mental.
Bibble came back.
He's now in the asylum. So Harker is being asked to go to Transylvania and close the sale of these 10 properties with the Count. And basically, upon his return, he's going to marry his fiancée, Mina, played by Winona Ryder.
And again, I love when he talks to his boss, and he says, "What happened to Mr. Renfield?" And the boss like, he's got that.
We don't
weird,
talk about that.
Weird, yeah, he goes, nothing. Personal problems. Yeah, it's fine. He's not in an asylum or anything.
No, it's fine. It's fine. If they were making a film together, he would have left for creative differences.
Yeah.
Oh boy. So we skip. I'm always surprised when I watch this film again how fast we skip past all of the bits that previous movies kind of linger on. We get no stay at the inn.
No.
We do get gypsies, but only in the carriage. So
only
basically, we skip.
And there's a longer version of that scene as well, where the gypsy with the veil tells him he's cursed and stuff.
Yes, yeah. So we get immediately cuts to his kind of diary entry, doesn't it? As he's traveling, and we get that wonderful kind of artistic travel.
Yeah. Again, that's all practical.
It's
all
great.
done within screen. You know, there's
presumably like a back screen instead of, you know.
Yeah, the sky and the eyes that appear over him are all from a backlit projection.
Well, I mean, they would have been doing that for the travel anyway, probably. So yeah, it makes sense they could do that.
Almost the entire film was filmed on stage, on the MGM stage, and the only scene that was not filmed on the soundstage was in the church later.
Right.
The wedding scene that was a genuine Greek Orthodox church. Other than that, everything else was on the stage. The swimming pool was used for most of this. A lot of the scenes, like the castle stuff, was built in the swimming pool. The anything that kind of involved water was all the garden and stuff, all built in the swimming pool. It's amazing that what they did. You know, the train stuff was all models, all, you know. Even when when later on when they're stood at the gates of the house, it's literally she stood at the gates, and then behind her is just a bit of space, and then the model of the house, you know, on like a crane sort of thing.
Yeah,
I love it. I love the way,
amazing.
You know, it was all the practical stuff they used.
So yes, he kind of berates the driver for dropping him there early. He's like, "We're early, like there's no one here." And of course, like you said, the gypsies basically tell him he's cursed and give him a cross and kick him out the door and ride off as fast as they can. And then of course
and it's always one of my favorite lines from the book, and a lot of them use it is "For the dead travel fast."
Yes,
I love that when she gives him the cross.
Yeah. So yeah, he's then taken by carriage to the castle, and he rides past the blue flames and sees the wolves. And
how stylized is that?
Oh, it's amazing.
Is Draken is the rider? He's got that massive sort of hawk helm.
I love the
way the hand comes down and pushes him into the. It's a great shot, isn't it?
I one of the things I adore in this film is all of the different shapes that Dracula takes throughout the movie.
Yeah.
He's like, he never looks the same twice. Like in every scene he looks different. He's like a different creature, and like, yeah, it's great. But yeah, so he finally gets to the castle and he meets the Count, who, you know, obviously in Dracula tradition has food there prepared for him, and you know, says that he won't.
And a lot of people don't like the robe and stuff. But I love
it. I love it. The robe and his shadow.
I don't like the bum. The bum hair is weird.
It works though.
It works because it's the whole idea is to make him look weird and to make him look,
and the hairy hands,
you know, unnatural. Yeah, they've got the hairy palms, which very few, you know, versions do with the hairy palms, because that's in the book.
Yeah. So yeah, he meets him, and you know, he says, you know, I hope you don't mind, I've already eaten, and he does that really awkward, I never drink wine. Okay, buddy. But yeah, so he basically is there to sell, and I'm trying to think now whether we cut back to Mina at this point. I forget because it cuts back and forth a little bit.
Yeah, it does. I can't remember which it does, but
I think it cuts back to Mina.
Yeah.
At this point, because this is before, because they close the sale and then he's like, "Hey, I want you to say you're going to stay for a month." But I think that's after he's seen the picture of Mina.
Yes,
I believe. So I think we cut back to Mina, who is staying with Lucy, her rich friend.
Yeah.
Who is fucking hilarious in these early scenes.
Sadie Frost is so amazing as Lucy. It's my favourite Lucy.
She's fantastic, and I just love the way she's playing all three of these guys. It's so funny. Like watching her go to work on these three guys is just incredible. Yeah. But of course, we start with Mina typing on her wanky typewriter.
Yeah.
New technology
for her future husband to be.
Yes, and Lucy comes in. Of course, Mina's got the book.
She's also sort of Kama Sutra thing, isn't it? She's sort of sneaking a look at, which apparently is Coppola's own version of the book.
Oh, really?
Which went missing.
Oh.
So yeah, he does. It was on the set and it went missing. So somebody half-inched it.
Yes, and Lucy comes in and she's like, "God, is Jonathan, convinced you to use that bloody thing?"
Yeah.
Typewriters, that'll never catch on.
Yeah.
And Mina we get a bit of an exposition dump, and Mina kind of says, Jonathan thinks he's too poor to marry me, even though I'm just a teacher myself. I've not got much money. And she said, I'm probably making it worse by being here with you, my rich friend. And then they get into talking about the sexual acts, because of course, like, Mina's acting all innocent, but she drops the book, and he's like, and we get that, like, Mina's like, can a man and a woman really do that? And Lucy's like, I did last night. And she's like, well, in my dreams anyway. And then we cut to the three guys turn up who have basically given a marriage proposal.
Yeah, her three suitors.
We've got Quincy, who's the Texan.
They literally file in one after the other.
I know, and the way she greets each of them is like they're the one for her. I love that. She's so good. I
love the Quincy one is so great. She goes up to him and she sort of puts her arms in his jacket and she's talking about she wants to hold his...
Well, because she knows that Mina's watching, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. She's completely hoodwinking her into thinking that she's talking about something else.
It's a fucking hell of a knife, though.
That fucking Bowie knife is amazing. I totally want that. That Bowie knife is so cool. And
Crocodile Dundee would be impressed by that.
Yeah, completely. And then, of course, Dr. Seward comes in... well, we should also say that Quincy's played by
Bill Campbell.
Billy Campbell, who I think most people probably know him as the Rocketeer.
Yeah.
This is one of the only things I know him from, to be honest.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I've seen him in a few sort of TV series recently, but he never was as big as I think he should have been. But
no, I agree.
He's great as Quincy.
And as you said, Jack's next, the Doctor, played by Richard E. Grant.
Who I love, like, comes in as this sort of bumbling sort of doctor who trips over the rug and sits on Quincy's hat.
Yeah.
And like you said, each one she as soon as
she fawns over them as if they're like...
She completely drops Quincy and goes straight to Jack.
Yeah.
And then
of course Lord Arthur turns up.
Arthur comes in with played by Carrie Elwes, and she does exactly the same to that poor bugger. And I love the way they sort of look at each other, Quincy and Jack look at each other almost consoling. It's like, oh yeah, you too, huh?
Yeah. There is a kind of begrudging understanding between the three of them that they're all like, okay,
yeah,
two of us are going to end up disappointed here.
It's really weird as well. I've watched the on the making stuff. They Coppola got them all to all the actors up onto his place in Napa Valley sort of thing, and he got them all doing weird like actor for fuck's sake, sort of games and things like that, where they would like throw like sounds at each other and
okay.
do like weird improvisations and stuff, and he got them the three of these actors to bond, and they went on balloon rides and all these like really weird things, and you see them doing these sort of exercises. That's what I'm looking for. These like weird vocal acting exercises. It's the weirdest fucking thing. It's like totally that sort of oh I'm going to be a tree now and all that sort of stuff. It's like really fucking weird.
So we see they start complaining. Meanwhile, like Jonathan's with Dracula, he's complaining about his trip here, and he says like I got like traveled through this blue inferno and there's wolves and shit.
Yeah,
and then of course the wolves howl and we get the creatures of the night.
Yeah, I think before that we get the stuff where he sort of inadvertently insults Dracula, and Dracula's talking
of course. Sorry, yes, he does. Yeah,
about,
Dracula says about his heritage and his lineage, and he says that it didn't go well for his family, and it's weird because Harker laughs, but it's like, dude, that would have been inappropriate. Obviously inappropriate. It's not even like, oh, sorry, I made a mistake. It's like, dude, like. He's got like portraits of his fucking family everywhere. He's obviously quite proud of his heritage, mate.
That's one of those ones that I love as well. Is the portrait of him?
That's great.
It's based on the self-portrait by Albrecht Dürer, which is again, it looks almost exactly like that painting. He was a German Renaissance painter. I love that painting, and they just basically just painted Gary Oldman's face on it, and it's exactly the same.
And of course, Jonathan says he sees the resemblance. He's like, I see the resemblance, and of course, he thinks it's one of his ancestors.
And one thing that I noticed a lot more, because I've never actually seen a HD version of this. I watched
DVD version
of it this time round. And the shadows and the things that you see moving constantly, there is constant weird.
Oh, it's great! I love the shadows
stuff in this whole sort of scene. And Dracula, his own shadow himself, it has a life of its own.
I love that stuff.
It moves around, and I love it when
I like it when he comes from the other direction. That's great.
The shadow's there, and he looks to where he should be, and he's not there. He comes,
and in a moment when he sees the picture of Mina, and he says, do you believe in fate and that hearts separated across time could be reunited? And he says, I see you found Mina. We're to be married, and you see the shadow strangle.
Yeah,
he's like strangling him. So good. So good. This performance would have been so camp and crap if it wasn't for Gary Oldman being such a good goddamn actor. He pulls this off so well.
It's at times just a little push, it could completely collapse.
Oh, but he toes the line every time.
It's almost constantly on the verge of being silly.
Yeah,
especially with the hair and the way he looks. You think, at any moment it could be really, really silly, but I don't think it is. I think
there are a few scenes, particularly when the scene with the newborn baby and the brides. Where he looks menacing, just regardless of how ridiculous he looks. He is scary in that scene. I'm genuinely.
It's one of my favourite laughs he's got in that scene. That particular scene is amazing.
But yeah, so I love when we see he talks about the blue inferno and the wolves, so we get the creatures of the night and all of that, and then I love like almost immediately afterwards, like Harker just looks out the window and he just sees him crawling around on the walls.
Yeah,
it's like okay. Like there's no doubt he's a weirdo. He's quite a strange dude.
And because you also get that the end of the scene with the suitors, you've got Dracula's shadow coming in over them.
Oh, over Mina, yes.
Over Mina and the
she feels it, which she says later on. She feels like he's always there. Later, she calls him as her prince and stuff.
Yeah.
But yes, so Dracula. Sees the Harker successfully closes the deal. The houses are bought, and he kind of congratulates the Count. He's like, congratulations, you now own 10 properties, including the Abbey, right?
Yeah, Carfax Abbey,
which will come to play later. And then so Dracula sees the picture of Mina, and Harker presumably lost the picture. He's like, oh, I thought she was lost. I didn't know where she was. And we get this speech about how hearts divided through time and whatnot, being reunited. And you get this, all of the wonderful shadow stuff is like probably the best scene for the shadows doing crazy things. But it's so well done.
You don't really see the shadow stuff after the beginning, but
this is what I like about this film. I don't think anything outstays its welcome.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, they do it and they move on, and then because this is the last time you'll see him in this form. Pretty much, he'll just be the other things now from now on. He's either Gary Oldman or he's like some crazy beast or creature.
Yeah.
He's got all these different forms, including the gas form. I like the gaseous form later on. But yeah, so obviously the Count believes that Mina is a reincarnation of Elisabetta. And he immediately says, Jonathan, I want you to basically tell everyone you know that you're staying for another month, and I want you to write letters back home. And Jonathan is pretty clear that he knows he's kind of screwed. He's like, I am in trouble. I've seen some weird shit. This is not going to be good. But he's terrified that if he lets it out, if he says anything in the letters, the Count will obviously read it and know.
Yeah.
So he pretends like it's fine. Although he is clearly off in his letters. He's very cold and short, as we'll come to in a bit. But yes.
And we get that. You get that scene with where he's shaving.
Oh yes.
And, the Count comes in. So we do get a bit more shadow stuff here.
Yes, and of course we get his fear of crosses, the mirror as well breaking.
That's where you get the
fucking rich of you to be talking about vanity when you've got massive self portraits of yourself. Never mind. But yes,
I love that bit when he cuts himself with the shaving, and he says, "Oh, be careful how you cut yourself." And he takes the razor, and I love that.
That shot is fantastic.
Sort of turns to the camera, and he licks the blade.
Yeah,
and the sort of delight he gets from
so good.
The little bit of blood it's so well done.
It's fantastic. So we so he writes the letters. Obviously, Mina gets the letter saying that he's staying for another month. And she immediately knows. She's like, something's off. He's very cold, and it's not like him at all. The letter's really short as well. It's just like, hey, I've got to stay for another month. I love you. Bye.
Yeah.
But of course, Lucy doesn't.
The castle either. Actually, the castle's a fucking amazing.
Oh, it's amazing, isn't it?
The whole sort of it's a weird mix of like odd statues and stonework and industrial iron.
Yeah,
it's almost steampunky in its.
It kind of is actually, isn't it? Yeah,
it's got these weird like iron girders sticking out of bits, and there's like what you don't see in the normal version, but in one of the extended scenes is there's a lot of water everywhere. And it was so fucking cool. And the actual castle itself, when you see it, was based on another painting of I can't remember who painted that one though. But it looks like someone sat on a throne, doesn't it? It's got that weird, almost human-looking aspect to the castle. You can see it sort of like almost like it's a decaying body on a throne. It's really fucking cool.
Yeah. It's absolutely amazing. But yeah, so Mina gets the letter and she's upset, but Lucy doesn't care because she's picked the one for her.
To number 3.
Lord Arthur Homewood. Lady and Lord Homewood, as I think she says. She's decided to marry Arthur. And then she does care about her friend. She's like, oh, you seem down, what's wrong? And obviously they talk and whatnot. But yes, so obviously, time progresses, and I think this is where we see, Jonathan's time in the castle, and we see that he sees them filling the boxes of dirt. His workers filling the boxes with earth, and he can't quite understand why he's sending dirt to England. As he sees his servants doing that, and then I think this is where we get the brides turn up.
Yeah, we get him walking through the castle, and you get the weird things like the upside down rats, and the opens that chest full of sort of weird potions and things, and he uncorks one that it drips up, which I love.
Yeah,
that's just such a little. And I think I love the idea that everything in this castle is just weird and not quite right. It's got that sort of almost like it's all another places of another dimension. It's got its own gravity and its own existence. It's just the weirdness of this castle.
Yeah.
And like we said in like the Nosferatu version, is like it reflects the Count himself. It's weird. Its weirdness reflects him.
Yeah, absolutely.
And he gets he hears a voice that sounds like Mina.
Yeah, she calls to Jonathan, doesn't she? My Jonathan.
He goes into this sort of bedroom with this huge bed on it, which was they consulted a magician for that as well. It's a
really?
Yeah, it's a magician's trick. He wanted them to the brides to come out of the bed to sort of and I love this scene. It's so fucking cool.
It's amazing.
You've got the three again. It's probably my favorite versions of the brides as well.
Well, and I mean, obviously, Dracula as a concept is very sexual.
Mm-hmm.
But this is like of the Dracula films we've covered so far. This is probably the most sexual, I think, of all of them. Like completely. This is really heavy on the
with intent as well.
Oh no, absolutely, yeah, it's intentional. But I think it's the most kind of sexually charged Dracula.
And Monica Bellucci's one of them as well. Mm-hmm. And one of the I forget which one it was. One of them was actually a Romanian actress, and she apparently helped with the Romanian vocals and pronunciations during the opening scene.
Right.
So she helped with their like coach them, I think.
Oh, that's cool. I didn't know that.
When they were talking at the beginning in Romanian.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's modern Romanian, but it's supposed to be ancient Romanian. But
there's I mean,
man, okay, it's fine. I care.
Fine.
It still sounds fucking cool.
Yeah, I mean, we got fucking Keanu Reeves over there.
Exactly.
Whatever. Let's just go with it at this point.
I mean, it must have been a terrible day at the office for Keanu, wasn't it?
Oh god, yeah. Must have been real tough. So of course they start coming on to him, and it's all very sexual, and then of course they start drinking the blood.
Yeah.
And then the Count turns up.
Yeah.
And I love this stuff. It's so cool. One of the brides escapes to the roof. She climbs up the wall onto the roof. The other two are like stuck together, and they kind of retreat.
Yeah,
back.
He sort of throws them off the right of him, doesn't off of Jonathan.
Yeah.
And he sort of almost glides in, doesn't he? Sort of flinging his arms around and angrily saying, he's not for you, he's mine, sort of thing.
Yeah. And
I love that. Again, they used that. He consulted dancers and things for the movements of the.
That's fantastic.
Together, and it's a weird sort of backwards filmed spider.
And we get this wonderfully ominous kind of speech from Dracula when one of the brides is like,
she
what
says,
do you know of love or whatever? And he's like, I used to love and I will love again, and it's real sinister kind of look on his face. And of course the brides beg him, and they're like, is there nothing for us? Do we get nothing? And of course he presents this baby. One of the few times I think when Keanu does a reasonable job, his reaction to the baby, he is it's like, okay,
Yeah, I agree. I think that it's
this scene actually is probably one of the strongest scenes in the film.
Yeah,
it's really like from an acting perspective, everyone's great.
I think that the problem is that there's nothing really wrong with Keanu's acting.
It's the accent that does it. He just shouldn't have done an act. It feels like he's concentrating way too hard on the accent to act properly.
Yeah.
I kind of feel like I would have forgiven it if he just was an American. They just made it an American instead and just went with it,
that probably would have worked if they would have just said, he was an American immigrant or something.
That would have worked. Living in England, but from America. There you go, Keanu. Pressure's off.
Yeah.
Just do your thing. But yeah, a wonderful scene. I love that whole stuff. But Jonathan has now been missing for like months, and Mina is like absolutely sick with worry. But Lucy is busy planning her wedding.
Yep.
And they have this.
You get that scene in the garden, don't you?
Yeah.
Them sort of frolicking in the rain.
In the rain, but then they suddenly feel terrified. Is the sinister storm.
It's great. It's literally the coming of Dracula. It's him bringing the storm with him, and the way he influences, the very atmosphere.
Yes, yeah. And of course, we then see the ship is coming as well. Is the storm's washed up dead sailors and whatnot, and the ship is now arrived.
Yeah.
There's
so many really cool blood splash shots in this movie.
Wonderful.
And one on the boat where you get the blood just goes up the sail. That is such a cool shot.
My favourite bloodshot is later with the wolf attack on Lucy when they just I don't think she's even in the shot. It's just a bed that they just threw blood all over. But it's such a cool shot. It's like something out of The Shining. It's great.
That's exactly it. There are so many shots that are homages to other movies, and that was his homage to The Shining.
It worked because it immediately made me think of The Shining when I saw it.
Yeah. It almost looks like just two blokes with buckets of blood.
But it's an effective shot, and it looks,
Yeah.
But anyway, Lucy is used to sleepwalk apparently, and she's fallen back into that trend.
Yeah.
And she keeps sleepwalking, but every time she comes back, she's pale and tired and confused. Of course, this kind of culminates when Mina is there when this happens. She hears Lucy, she's kind of like dancing around, and she's quite...
Yeah, the scene, the shot of her coming through the garden with that drapery around her and the wind blowing, and she's sort of, like you said, almost sort of dancing through the sort of the garden to the sort of like the center of the maze. It's such a great shot, and I have on my mantelpiece a lead figure of it's a D&D vampire,
right,
or vampiress, and a friend of mine who also loves this film said, "I'll paint that for you," and I was reluctant because it's like I kind of want to paint it myself, but he said, "I'll paint it for you," and I
he made it into.
And it's painted as Lucy, and it sits on top on my mantelpiece. I absolutely adore that little lead figure.
That's so cool.
It's brilliant. You can immediately look at it. It's not wearing quite the same outfit, but she's painted.
The intent is clear.
Yeah, she looks so amazing when she's coming, through the garden. Such a great shot. And of course, she meets Dracula in his wolf form.
Yeah.
Which again
or partial wolf form, because later on he does full wolf, but here he's like wolf monster, wolf human.
And I like again we didn't mention it, but when he's on the boat, there's that really cool scene of him in the box.
Yes,
and he's got like almost like what they call it is a caul over his face. And it's like stretching against it, and you can see his like features changing and stuff.
And now you say that when they're talking about the dirt as well, you get that great shot of him coming out of the coffin. He's kind of
again
flies out.
Homage to Nosferatu.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, so he Dracula in wolf form grabs Lucy and he bites her.
And only that he's pretty much. Attacking her. He's
assaulting her. But he doesn't realize that Mina's there, and Mina, he turns and sees her, and we get that great shot as we kind of see her like heart and stuff and the blood.
See her blood going through her system.
And he immediately says, no, don't see me, because obviously he doesn't want her to see him. And you get that quick flash where he looks like Gary Oldman. You just get that, he's like, he's the original human Dracula for a brief split second.
Yeah.
And then he's gone, and Lucy's there, basically, drained.
And she knows that someone called her, but
yeah, and she says, like, I don't understand. Like, she's completely confused as to what's happened to her.
And of course, Mina does, because of Dracula said, "Don't see me." She has no.
She's forgotten.
No knowledge of that he was there.
Yeah. But so she's ill, and she continues to get worse and worse. And of course, one of her potential husbands was a doctor. So Dr. Stewart, who and
we missed the scene with Dr. Stewart talking to Renfield.
With Renfield, I was just going to say we did, didn't we?
He's doing that, and they make him a complete. He makes them a complete morphine junkie, doesn't he? You've got him shooting up.
Yeah.
While he's talking into the wax cylinder.
Yeah.
And apparently, for the much to Coppola's annoyance, the TV version, I'm presuming in America, not over here, but apparently the TV version used to remove all of Tom Waits' scenes.
Really?
Just for like to shorten it, I guess.
I love those scenes. Those are some of my favourite scenes.
I think my favourite Renfield is probably still Dwight Frey.
I agree.
But
that is the laugh, man. It's the laugh.
Yes, it is. The laugh is amazing.
The laugh. He's amazing.
But Tom Waits comes a very close second.
He's fantastic as Renfield.
I love that he's got that plate of bugs.
Some hors d'oeuvres.
Hors d'oeuvres, doctor. That's disgusting. Actually, they're very nutritious.
Yeah. And then we get this great conversation.
Style of the for fuck's sake, the asylum.
Yes.
With the guys with the head cages.
Head cage.
To protect them, and the little devices that Tom Waits has got on his fingers, supposedly to stop him clawing it itself and stuff.
Yeah.
So everything has been thought of. Everything has its little part.
Yeah.
And again another great scene with him talking about and he starts talking about why he needs lives and he needs.
Yeah, and they start talking about spiders eat flies, so are spiders more powerful? And then what about the bird? I can't think what it is. There's a bird in the room.
Yes.
And then he starts talking about a kitten. He's like, oh my god, no one would deny me a kitten. And then of course he says, well, what about a cat?
Cat. Yes, my salvation depends on a cat.
It's like, you got a shared deal there. If you got a kitten, it would grow into a cat and you'd have it longer. But never mind. He's probably just going to eat it anyway. So,
I was going to say, he's only going to feed it up.
I was always confused because he's like, oh, I'll feed it. It's like, well, really? I thought you just eat it, to be honest. But fine. I guess he wants to feed it up and then eat it. But
I'm not sure he'd have the patience, though. I think he just...
No. But yes, so...
and then, of course, he attacks... He attacks... the doctor.
Yes.
And one thing I noticed this time, I didn't notice before. I've never noticed before. He attacks him on the right side of his neck, and when he pulls away, Richard E. Grant grabs the left side of his neck.
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Which is, I'm not big on.
It's just a fun little thing.
Mistakes. This time I did notice it. I did think it was quite funny.
Yeah.
But again, it's who cares?
Yeah. So of course, Dr. Stewart, he obviously goes to visit Mina, and you've still got the three of them. They're all still there, and they're all obviously Quincy is husband to be, and his wife to be is obviously really sick, but you've also still got everyone else there, and they're all still kind of jealous of each other, and they don't really listen to Stewart. Doesn't Quincy's like, oh, last week you wanted to marry her, now you're saying she's crazy, and
now you want to have her committed,
yeah. And he's like, obviously he's in love with her, but he's like, she's not in her right mind, and she's showing signs of anemia, and she says,
I can hear mice at the other end of the house, and I can,
Yeah.
I feel things, and I hear stuff. So everything seems to be heightened.
Yeah, yeah. So he's really unsure as to what to do. And he decides to contact Van Helsing. Now, Van Helsing in this is actually something of at least early on, he seems to be quite a popular figure within those scientific circles. He's giving this lecture and people are agreeing, because normally he's like a kook and everyone's like, oh god, this Van Helsing kook. But which is how the potential husbands act around him. But the scientific community seem to be kind of okay with him. They're listening to him and they all agree and they clap afterwards and whatnot. And
I guess it's just one of those things though, because they don't know him as a
well, he's not, is he? I suppose
they don't know him as a doctor. They just know him as this lunatic that's turned up to the house.
And he does act like a lunatic, to be fair.
A couple of basically said to Anthony Hopkins, do what you want. Go mad.
And he does.
He fucking does. I mean, he even gave him that scar on his face.
Did he?
Anthony Hopkins wanted him to have like a dueling scar, like he'd been in some duel at some point. He wanted him to have a life and a background, and he is nuts.
He's mental in this, and he gets more and more unhinged as the film goes on.
Yeah, he's got the complete mannerism.
By the end, I was like, if Quincy shoots him, I wouldn't blame him. The way he's acting towards the end, just like Jesus.
And he's giving that lecture on diseases of the blood and things, and
and he
gets a telegram from Jack, and he drops or whatever he's doing. That is one thing I will say about this movie. It's got a very odd sense of distance and time.
Yes.
It's the distance, especially later on when they're
they travel from place to place like nothing. It's like, we're going to Transylvania. Okay.
At one point he says, I think they say in the diary that it'll take 2 weeks to get to a certain place, but
there's scenes in between where stuff's happening that kind of
when Mina goes to marry Jonathan, it seems to take like
5 minutes,
a day to get to and she comes back just as quickly.
She jumps in an Uber and off she goes.
Yeah. And of course, sorry.
Jack's like super thankful to Van Helsing, but Van Helsing says, hey, I always come to my friends when they're in need. And he asks what the symptoms are, and he explains the symptoms, but he says like the blood's disappearing, but I don't know where it's going.
Yeah.
And of course Van Helsing wants to go and see her.
Yeah, and when we get that,
screaming.
This is the screaming. So I didn't know this. I looked. So watching sort of the making of the stuff. So the screams and the vocal noises are done by a singer called Diamanda Galas.
Right.
She's this Greek American singer who I'm really going to look into a lot more. She has this amazing vocal. She's a trained opera sort of singer,
right? And
she can do these the most amazing things with her voice.
Oh, right.
And she has she's done loads of work for movies. So she's done work on The Conjuring, The Ring 2, Lords of Illusion.
Right.
And interestingly, the other week when we did Conan,
yes,
she was the voice and the vocals of the witch.
Oh, really?
Conan. Yeah. So the laughter,
she does the laughing,
the laughter and stuff, and the vocals of the witch is all done by her, which makes so much sense. And of course, she's also she's singing on the Exelume, which is one on the soundtrack.
Yeah.
So yes, amazing fucking vocals. I only recently, through doing research a bit, found out about her, and she's going to be somebody I'm going to look into. Truly amazing vocals.
But Van Helsing immediately sees the bite marks that I guess the doctor didn't see, or
she had a collar on it, didn't she?
Yeah, but you'd think he was doing a bloody examination. Do you know what I mean? It's like, come on.
Yeah.
But anyway, Van Helsing finds it, and he realizes, I think, immediately what's gone on, but he doesn't say. All he says is she needs a blood transfusion right now, And of course, Dr. Stewart's like, "Can you do that? Like, that's experimental." And he's like, "Well, done it on a goat once. It'd be fine.
Yeah,
It should be all right.
yeah.
Worth a shot at it. She's gonna die otherwise." So yeah, and at that point, Quincy comes in and he's like, "What insane medicine are you doing on my wife, buddy?" And he's and then so I think originally the doctor was going to give the transfusion, was going to give blood, and then as soon as Quincy turns up, Van Helsing's like, "Right, you, blood now."
Yeah, and he says, we need your blood. And he says, I'd give my last drop for this, and I like.
Well, let's hope you're the right blood type, other's it's going to be very short-lived.
Yeah, we'll just gloss over the blood.
Well, no, I just assumed they were very lucky. I mean, that could happen, right? I mean, that is entirely possible. He rolled a fucking 20.
But I do love the look that Van Helsing gives him when he says that. He's almost like an admiring look to him, and says, your last drop. I don't ask that much of you, but you're very welcome.
He's already starting to act a bit mental. Yeah.
And again, the transfusion device, all fucking cool.
Oh god, yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, just want that on a shelf.
That prop is so good.
Yeah.
So
you can say that about so many things. I was
going to say,
I want the armor. I want the Bowie knife. I want just little bits and pieces. The cross that he wears. So many really cool props in this movie.
The Texan's entire outfit, to be honest.
Yes,
especially later on when he's got the full hat and the duster and the rifle. And such a good look.
Dracula's grey suit and top hat.
Oh yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, well, we'll get to that very shortly.
We will do, yeah.
So of course, they do the transfusion, and Van Helsing leaves Garlic around the bed, and they have a conversation, all three of them, or all four of them, sorry. And he says, "Look, you're a doctor. Do you not realize?" It's weird because the argument normally is like, you're a doctor, you should believe in science. But the argument here is you're a doctor, so you should believe in vampires.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. But he's like, you must know that there are things out there that you don't understand and you can't comprehend.
He's saying that you should, I guess his point is that you should be open-minded about.
Yes, which is true.
Things, yeah. He does that little disappearing act, doesn't he, where he's talking about, listing off diseases of the blood and all that sort of stuff, and he's talking about, weird things that you don't see, and then he disappears, and then he sort of in a different place where he lights his cigar, and they all look over and it's like, what did you get over there?
Yeah. But they still find it kind of ridiculous to believe, and they're not totally convinced yet. I think the doctor's closer than anyone else, but the rest of them are like, because he knows Van Helsing.
Van Helsing is his mentor, isn't it? He taught him, so he trusts what he says.
Yeah.
Of course, he has no other explanation, so what else are you gonna do?
Yes. Meanwhile, Prince Vlad is being really creepy to Mina, pretending that he wants to find the cinematograph, which is like, he's literally outside it.
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know where it is, I can't find it.
And again, you get these lovely little practical effects.
Oh yeah.
With he takes the newspaper off of the little newspaper boy, and Mina's in a shop buying, I can't remember what it is, she's buying something, and you look at the window, and it's the paper is just sort of floating in midair, and again it's just holding up on wires, and it's so effective.
Yeah. And of course at first she tries to kind of deny him. She's like, it's why don't you go to a museum, why don't you go to an art gallery, find some culture.
If you seek culture, there are London's full of museums.
Yeah.
And it's her husband.
She's like, do you not know my husband?
Do you know my husband? Shall I call a policeman? And he's like, oh, husband, I didn't realise, I'll bother you no more. And she realises that she's being rude.
Yes, yeah.
I mean, to be honest, creepy dude comes up to you in the middle of the street and says stuff to you. She's probably doing the right thing, really.
She probably is, but I think there is the sense that she is drawn to him, and there's some supernatural thing going on here. Yeah, she even says that she feels like she knows him, doesn't she?
Yeah. And he introduces himself as Prince Vlad, and she's like, a prince, no less.
Yeah. And of course, they go to the theater.
Yeah.
And she kind of, it's just all going reasonably well until a massive wolf turns up.
Yeah.
And starts terrorizing people. And then, of course, Mina's kind of...
All that stuff as well is all the practical stuff. You see literally the prop from the opening in the background, and you've got the screen that is showing literal movies from the film from the time.
Yeah.
From when it's from the 1890s. Really fucking cool.
It's very cool. And then, of course, Mina sees that Vlad is actually friends with the wolf.
Yeah.
And she's kind of surprised to see that. Meanwhile, Jonathan jumps out the bloody window.
Yeah.
I think it's around this point. Jonathan, makes a desperate bid to escape. He's weak, loss of blood. The brides have been keeping him alive. They've been draining him, but not enough to where he's gonna...
I mean, to be honest, there's that you you see him sort of like draped over, weakly lying there, and there at various points of him, like an arm here, a leg there, and there's blood sort of trailing from him and everything. How much fucking blood does he have left, for fuck's sake?
Well, doesn't he say that they keep him alive? So I'm assuming they feed him and kind of then do it again, and
But the way
I know it does look kind of
Nah, he's gonna be dead in a minute. He's not. He ain't surviving this.
Especially not when he then falls into the bloody river, which must be freezing cold. He's got no blood circulation going. It's like the man is dead.
There's a longer scene that was cut down of him escaping.
Yeah, it's kind of awkward cut, this fall into the water, because he kind of slides down the side of the castle and then ends up in the river.
There's a slightly longer scene of that where he's using two sticks to hold as a cross to hold the brides back and stuff.
Yeah.
Obviously you don't see that in the standard version.
No. So Jonathan falls into the river and swims to the other side, which I'm guessing he travels a bit further, but it almost looks like the Sisters of the Blessed Sacrament are like on the other side of the river, and he's like, oh, there they are. He's like their next door neighbours to Dracula.
The convent's just across the road.
Yeah. But he knocks on...
I'm guessing the river, let's just say the river took him.
Yes, I'm assuming that's what happened. It's just the way it's cut. It's kind of...
Yeah.
It's like the sisters are next door.
Distance and time is very relative in this.
Movie. But wonderfully shot scene when he approaches them and he's covered in mud and the rain and thunder and stuff. They take him in and they tell Mina. They send a letter to Mina saying, "Hey, we found your husband and he wants you to come out and marry him because he's worried that something's going to happen to you. He's worried that your life is in danger. He wants you to travel out to us." Mina gets the letter, but is like, shit, I've been kind of dating this prince.
Yeah, I was going to say, she gets the letter after she has her second encounter with him, doesn't she? Where she goes out.
Yes, she goes out with him, and then stands him up this time, doesn't she? Because this is the third time I think they were going to go out for food or something.
Really good as well, because you get him talking about absinthe and things, and
I love that speech.
Yeah, about the Green Fairy, and they talk of his homeland, and I think, excuse me. They talk about his homeland, and she feels like she knows what he's talking about. She feels like she knows exactly where he is. She feels like she knows it.
Mm-hmm.
And he cries, and she cries when he's talking, and he catches her tears and turns them into diamonds.
Yeah.
And
or fashion jewelry.
Yes, fashion jewelry. Yeah. And when she gets, he takes her she takes her home, and you get that this thing with Van Helsing and I think it's the doctor, isn't it? They're coming out of the house, and Mina's just received the letter, isn't it? And she goes to tell Lucy about it, and Van Helsing sort of grabs her. And he starts sort of
dancing with her. Yeah, it's really weird.
Dancing with her, and he starts talking to her, and it's like completely fucking insane.
I feel like Winona Ryder didn't know that was going to happen either, and it just kind of happens. And she's like, "Okay, I guess we're doing this."
It certainly feels like it. She actually she does a really good job here because they did do a lot of rehearsing on this movie.
Yeah.
Which Anthony Hopkins fucking hated.
Well, he doesn't need that shit.
Apparently, yeah. Apparently they did a Coppola made them do a table read of the whole book, and Anthony Hopkins absolutely loathed it. He was like, "What the fuck do I need to sit with all these people and read this bloody book?"
Yeah, because they need the help, not you.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
for them.
Look, Winona Ryder and Keanu Reeves get all the fucking help they can.
Yeah.
You and like Richard E. Grant and stuff, and
Gary Oldman, you're fine.
Definitely don't need the help.
You're here for moral support.
But you do. And he picks up and he's sort of dancing with her, and he sniffs her. He smells her. He can literally smell Dracula on her.
Yeah. He's like aware that
he knows that she's seeing Dracula.
But yeah, so she's like overjoyed, but then of course has this moment of realization where she's like, oh my god, I can never tell him about the prince, and that's gonna have to end there.
She goes up to see Lucy, and Lucy gives her her ring.
Yeah.
To go, she says, I've got to go and see him. She says, yeah, go.
Yeah. And of course, Mina sends the letter to Dracula, basically saying that my fiance's been found, and I'm gonna go.
Before that, we get the as Lucy's as Mina's sort of about to leave, Lucy has another like an attack, doesn't she? She starts clawing at her. I think someone puts some garlic down or something. Or
something like that.
And it affects Lucy, and she starts screaming, and Quincy comes in, and it's like, Quincy's here, and she starts sort of seductively talking to Quincy, like, come to me, Quincy, and Quincy gets closer, and that,
you see
like,
the teeth.
Bulging vein in his neck comes out, and she sort of goes to bite him, and Quincy's like terrified.
Well, Van Helsing with the fucking save, right? So
yeah, but they do they? I think does he give her something to sleep? I can't remember, but he like
pushes her back and he tells her to sleep, doesn't he? And he kind of mutters like Nosferatu, and he kind of looks at the
examines
teeth
her mouth, and you can see the sort of lip, the
and he shows it to Jack, doesn't he? He shows her teeth to Jack. He's like, look, but yes, so
and we did actually miss the ending of the cinematograph scene where he sort of puts Mina to sleep, sort of thing, and he's about to attack her. He's about to
it's the wolf that fucks everything up, right?
Yeah, and he stops himself. He actually sort of
because he loves Elizabeta, right? So he doesn't want to kill her and make her undead necessarily.
The practical fangs coming out, which is so well done.
It's awesome.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
So that's again missing bits, but there you go.
Oh well, this is what we do on this show. Miss bits out, tell it all out of order.
Yeah.
It's just what we do. But Dracula receives the letter from Mina saying that her fiance's been found and she's going to go marry him. And he's obviously heartbroken. He kind of morphs into a beast again.
Yeah, again, that bit there is referencing Cocteau's Beauty and the Beast.
Yeah, which is one of the best films ever made. It's my favourite adaptation of Beauty and the Beast. If you've never watched
amazing
the Cocteau version, it's, oh my god, it's so good. It's one of the most artistic films you will ever see.
Mm-hmm.
Amazing. Like that, what they did with sets and just everything in that film is so good. So good. I don't want to just watch it. It's fantastic. Because there's a lot of things going on in the background of that film, but it's best seen rather than described. So see it.
Yeah, completely.
So he's heartbroken. Obviously, he's lost Mina to Jonathan, and he's like, well, "Fuck it, I'll take Lucy instead." Then, and
he calls up winds and things, and he calls up the storm, and Helsing definitely now is convinced that this.
Well, he's overjoyed though.
Yeah, he's overjoyed.
Like super excited about it.
So he saw all his life. He says.
Yeah.
And I think it's never really stated, and I don't. I presume that he's supposed to be the reincarnation of the priest.
The bishop. I assume that. Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, I presume he has some sort of inkling
history.
As well.
Yeah, I'm assuming it's like a family history, like, you know.
Yeah.
But
yeah, and almost jealously, he's like, well, fuck this. If I can't have you, I'm gonna fuck over your friend. I'm gonna.
Yeah, and he basically goes to the house and morphs into a wolf and makes her explode into blood.
To living death.
Yes, yeah, and then she blows up.
Yeah, yeah.
She just explodes.
You get those really cool like crank shots of the movement as he's going through the garden.
Yes,
earlier on as well. And he knocks over Quincy.
Yeah.
Quincy sort of tries to shoot him, and he knocks Quincy down. And then he doesn't even touch Homewood. He literally just moves him with his presence, as it were. You know, he knocks him aside.
I guess he doesn't see him as much of a threat.
No,
like Quincy had a gun, so like
he says, you know, your impotent men with their spells cannot keep me out.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, he takes her. Lucy dies, but Van Helsing's like, I think you'll find she's undead, and you know,
and they're all sort of weeping over Lucy's body and stuff. And
the funeral scene is so funny.
It's before that he says to Jack, he says later on, he says if he gives some more.
No, that's what I mean at the funeral when he calls him over and he's just like, Jack, can we you know, and he's like, what do you
want to perform an autopsy? Like, no, I want to cut her heart out.
He's like, I want to cut her head off and take her heart.
Like, and he looks completely perplexed as to why Jack looks so upset.
Yeah. He's like, he just doesn't
like the whole idea.
He's almost got some like Hammer Frankenstein to him, you know, where he's like, this has to happen, so like, just deal with it. It's for the greater good. So
he's a man of science and action, and
regardless of your feelings, this has to happen
for sentiment.
No, absolutely. So she's later, you know, put into a tomb, and after a period of mourning with an open coffin, she looks great in that as well when she's all done up in the glass coffin.
Again, that's his homage to Snow White.
Right.
He used so many sort of things, you know, influences in this movie. He had this. So when he initially had he made this like storyboard book, and it was just paintings and pictures of what he wanted to use. So he had, you know, this book drawn up, and then he got artists to do a storyboard for it. So there were these two books that he had, you know, and he said the first one was more important to him because it was there to evoke feelings and emotions that he wanted to conjure for this movie.
Yeah.
So you get that wonderful shot of her lying in state in the coffin, in her wedding dress, no less.
Yeah.
It is a fucking awesome design. It's designed to make her look like a lizard.
Okay, yeah, I can kind of see that.
Yeah.
So Van Helsing, regardless of being insane, convinces them to open the coffin.
Yeah.
And of course they do so. And they find it empty.
Yeah. Again, that set is amazing.
Oh God, yeah. But they decide again. He convinces them then to stay the night. And later, Lucy returns with a child in her arms. Obviously, we know what the child's going to be used for. But you know, Van Helsing manages to get Lucy to release the child, and forces her back with the crucifix back to the coffin.
That poor little girl was genuinely terrified.
I'm not surprised. Lucy looks incredibly creepy in this shot. This scene she looks amazing in this scene. It might be my favorite look of hers. Actually, she looks so creepy.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
But yeah, he kind of he forces her back to the coffin with the crucifix.
she sort of again she's sort of
she kind of passes out briefly.
She's sort of beguiling Homewood, isn't she? She's come to me, and caress me and kiss me and all that sort of stuff. And he's going to her, and of course Van Helsing puts the cross up.
Yeah. And I think it's Van Helsing that basically, he says, because of your attachment to Lucy, you should be the one that kills her.
Yeah.
So Homewood's the one that drives the stake.
I love that thing. She's because again, I think that scene of her going into the coffin that was run backwards.
Yes.
So they're coming out obviously, and I love it when she's there and she's still, and then she sort of gets up. She vomits all that blood at him, in a sort of like blasphemous against the cross sort of thing. And so I love that. In like he says, you've got to do the deed. You've got to finish her off.
Yeah, and he does. He stakes her, and then Van Helsing cuts her head off.
Yeah,
as he said he would.
Yeah,
he's a man of his word.
And I think while that's we should mention actually when we forgot when the attack with Lucy's going on, the final attack with Lucy, you've also got it coming in with it jumps back and forth between the wedding.
Yeah, it does. Yeah.
Of Jonathan and Mina.
Yeah.
Apparently, the priest that was doing that service, it was all real. So I think they're actually married.
Yeah, I read that somewhere that they might actually be married.
Certainly, Winona Ryder thinks that they're married.
Yeah,
which might be a bit of a problem, but
yeah. But yeah, so they get married, and of course return to London, and pretty much immediately Lucy, they learn that Lucy's dead.
Yeah, and of course he sees when they're coming
in the car, getting
into the carriage, he sees that Dracula is just stood there watching them.
Yeah, and he's like, he can't believe he's young. He's young again.
Man himself, he's young.
Yeah.
And there's a weird thing going on with his hair for the rest.
It's gone all grey now in the long.
It's gone grey, but it keeps changing colour. It's never consistent.
Well, it's almost like they didn't give him a wig. They just chucked some talcum powder in his hair or something.
There's a bit later where it looks like he's actually wearing a wig. Because it's really...
it might have been a reshoot,
Yeah, it probably is.
Who knows? But they then have dinner with Van Helsing. And this is where Jonathan realizes, oh, actually, I know where Count Dracula is. He's in Carfax Abbey because I sold him it.
Where the bastard sleeps.
Yeah. And by this point, Van Helsing is like fucking raving lunatic levels of insane.
She says to him, was Lucy...
in pain? Was she in pain?
Yeah. Yeah, so we cut her head off and we cut her heart out and now she's fine.
Now she's fine. Man. Okay, cheers. This is over dinner. They're having this conversation.
Yeah, and that's it. You get that. You get that cut from the blood of Lucy's head to the big joint of meat that's been placed on their table.
I love cuts like that in films.
Yeah, it's a great cut.
So yeah, then I believe we get the scene where Mina goes to the sanitarium. With
they're basically they're all going to hunt.
They've all kind of ganged up now. They're all going to hunt Dracula, but we get this moment from Renfield where he betrays Dracula. It's almost like he has a moment of lucid thought.
Yeah,
because it doesn't last. It doesn't last more than like a few minutes. But he has this moment where he's like, "Get away!"
It's almost like he falls for Mina, isn't it? He says,
it's like she snaps him out of it somehow.
This is all awful. That it's like he wants to protect her suddenly. Yeah. He's like, he realizes how ghastly it all is, and this poor woman is at the center of it. It's like, run away from these men now, go.
And then he immediately starts cursing Dracula for falling for this pretty girl and taking her over him, and
promised it to me. You promised me eternal life.
Back to a raving madman.
Yeah.
So they then all the guys, the lads, decide to go and have a word down at the Abbey. So their plan is to go in. Basically,
I think it's quite funny that Jack says. he takes her to his rooms in the asylum. And it's like, yeah, you'll be perfectly safe here in the middle of a weird asylum with lunatics everywhere, and
you'll be fine.
It'll be fine.
So yes, Van Helsing and the lads go to visit Dracula's Carfax Abbey, and basically Van Helsing tells them, like, destroy the earth, the crates, and you know, don't leave him anywhere to
consecrate all the earth.
Yeah. But the joke's on them because Dracula heads to meet Mina instead.
Yeah, he's up in the rafters.
Yeah, he flies away.
Bat form, which again
looks amazing.
Bat form is awesome.
There's so many cool looks in this film, and they never use them more than once. They're just like there, and then they're gone. But that is my favorite one when he's hanging upside down, looking like that. He looks incredible.
Yeah.
So he goes to visit Mina. She obviously realizes.
First of all, he visits Renfield.
Oh yes, in gas form.
He turns to Mist, and he goes into. He says, "You know, Renfield, you have betrayed me."
And slams him into the wall.
Slams him against the wall. And there's a cut scene where Jack and Van Helsing come back to the asylum, and they find Renfield sort of dying, and says he's got like fractured skull and his ribs are broken, and Jack trepans him. He trepans him, and he has a brief sort of talk to Van Helsing.
Yeah.
It's a really nice little scene, actually. I recommend finding it. It's a nice little scene. Just a little extra Tom Waits. It's nice.
Yeah, well, that's always good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Mina realizes that the prince she's been kind of secretly dating is actually the vampire that killed Lucy.
Yeah. He says, "I'm Dracula," and she said, "You're the bastard that murdered my sweet Lucy."
But even though she's so upset and angry, she still can't resist him.
Yeah.
She still has to, you know, continue on.
Yeah.
And of course, Dracula finally drinks from Mina.
Mm-hmm.
And he then asks her to drink from his blood.
Yeah.
And he kind of opens the vein on his chest and, you know, offers her that. But again, he stops after she's taken a little bit, and he says, like, I love. What does he say?
I love you too much.
I love you too much to condemn you. Isn't that something like that?
I love you too much to condemn you.
It's a great line.
It's a life.
And then of course Van Helsing bursts in.
And she says that line, which has always been an odd line that people really don't like, which is when she says, "Take me away from all this death."
We missed the other bit of Van Helsing being mental when he's like telling Quincy that it's Dracula and that they're gonna go kill him, but he's hungry, and he's like, "Jack, I'm starving. Take me for food."
Yeah, and he says, "You're." Yeah, he says you're. He says you're a. Oh, what is it? He says it's something about a buzzard, isn't it?
He says, you old buzzard.
You're an old buzzard. Weird old buzzard or something like that.
So funny. But yeah, so Van Helsing bursts in, and they try to kind of take Dracula out here again, but again changes forms and turns into rats.
And he says, you know, you're look at what he says. Your war with God is over. You know, it's over. And he says, "Look what your God has done to me."
Mm.
And they tried it, but he's basically just too strong for them. He sort of pushes them back, and
then escapes
into the shadows, where he
turns
becomes
into rats. Yeah,
and escapes.
So at this point, Dracula knows, like, if I stay in England, I'm probably going to get murdered.
It's time to go home.
Time to go home. So he books passage home, and Mina and the lads follow closely behind.
Yeah, they realise Mina has a connection.
Yes. Van Helsing definitely knows there's something going on there, as he smelt it on her earlier. But yes, so he knows that Van Helsing is hot on the trail, along with them. But Dracula diverts the ship, right? He lands in a different location because he thinks that Van Helsing's onto him.
He knows these because he's reading. He knows their plans because he's reading Mina's thoughts.
That's right. Yeah.
So he took a detour and he moved up the coast and they missed him. So they decide that
to split up
is to split up so that
the worst idea.
Van Helsing and Mina are going to go straight to the castle.
Yeah.
And the lads are basically going to try and intercept him at Varna, I think it is.
Yes.
Presume that the only other place.
Pass.
Yeah, the only other place that he can come in is at Varna, so that they basically are going to try and intercept him there. But again, he's just slightly ahead of them. He's just managed to.
His gypsies have already got there first.
Got there first and picked him up, and they're
the bad gypsies. There's good gypsies and bad gypsies in this.
Yeah,
they're not just good.
And meanwhile, of course, Mina and
they get to the castle, don't they? And they stop for the night, and that's when the
yes, and Mina is sort of almost tries to seduce Van Helsing, doesn't she? And she says, it's what you did to me before you murdered her, you bastard. And she's coming, and you can see the brides are in the background. It's like they're influencing her, isn't it? It's almost like they're sort of willing her to sort of
leave,
take him down so that they can. And of course, he sees the brides and he makes a fire circle around them.
Yes, and he keeps her in the circle. But of course, so the brides can't get to them, but they do kill the horses.
They attack the horses, which is a great.
It's fantastic. Really
bloody scene of them taking this horse down.
Yeah, it's amazing. And of course, the next morning, then Van Helsing's decided he's had enough of the vampiresses.
Yeah,
and he heads in. He leaves Mina in the circle, sleeping, and he heads into the castle and beheads all of them.
Yeah, so this is when they
and then throws their heads into the gorge, which is
it's really cool. But I've always thought he deals with it way too easily. He deals with it. I'd like to have seen at least a tussle or something between him and the brides. But the thing,
especially because the film makes it clear that while they're weakened in the day, they are still fine.
That's exactly what I was going to say. They say earlier on, which we didn't mention, that the Dracula walks around during daylight hours because, like in the book, Dracula sunlight doesn't kill vampires.
No, weakens him.
In this, it just his powers are weak, but he can walk around like any normal human being during daylight hours. So it establishes that, and then the brides are just led there.
Yeah,
and they don't. Like there's three of them. You would have thought,
you'd think after the first one.
You would have thought after the first, exactly. That at least like one of them would have got up. But fine, whatever. But you also you do get the fact that Dracula feels the deaths.
Yes. Yeah. And of course Van Helsing shouts his name as he does it as well.
Yeah.
Dracul. So yes, the gypsy wagon is approaching the castle. Of course, Dracula is now aware of what's happened as well.
Yeah. And you do get that really cool scene where the carriage is coming over the sort of like the hill sort of thing in the distance, and the boys are giving chase.
Yeah.
And Van Helsing uses his binoculars to sort of see them, and he gives them to Mina. Mina looks she looks through first of all, but then she realizes that she can actually see them much better with her own eyes now.
Yes.
She's clearly changing.
Yeah.
You get that sort of almost like binocular vision where she sees them perfectly.
By the way, as a brief aside, I was never sure. Do you think I always assumed when I watched this movie that Dracula never wanted to turn Lucy, and that he only started that. I think he was going to drain her completely and kill her.
I think
and only stopped because
so.
Mina was there, and then that kind of started that whole thing.
Yeah, it feels like a jealous, like it was
like an accident to begin with.
Yeah.
But
I don't think he was going to turn her until.
Well, I think he planned on killing her in the garden, but then he saw Mina and left her, and then after that, like you said, it becomes a childish spite.
Yeah, I think so. That's how I've always interpreted it.
Same.
That he does it to spite Mina. Really.
Yeah.
It's like, fine, you're gonna fuck off and leave me. I'm gonna turn your best mate.
Yeah. But of course, they arrive at the castle, and Mina manages to use some magic of her own to protect Dracula. She uses the blue flame.
Was that the blue flame?
The blue inferno.
Yeah.
And Quincy gets stabbed, doesn't he? He gets stabbed by a gypsy.
The fight. So he goes to get onto the carriage, and he gets stabbed in the back.
Yeah.
And for the most part, I think this is a pretty cool fight scene. Actually,
it's great, and what I love is the timing of it when Jonathan gets to the box, but of course the sun sets and then Dracula just bursts out because of course now
yeah, again, which is a weird thing because they're trying to get him before sunset, but obviously his powers come in after
the sun's down,
sunset, so the exploding from the box is fucking
it's just great.
And again with the costume, the robe he's wearing in that thing is based on The Kiss by Klimt.
Right.
If you know that painting,
I don't know. I do.
Kiss. That his robe is literally that painting. Right. And he comes out, and the Jonathan hits him with the kukri across his throat.
Yes. Yeah.
And he gets stabbed with Quincy's Bowie knife.
Yeah. And Mina screams. It's like she feels the pain herself, and she's obviously upset for him. And it's Arthur that goes to finish Dracula, but Harker is the one that stops him and says, our work is finished here. Hers has just begun.
It's hers now. It's up to her.
Yeah. Quincy dies from his wounds. And Mina sits with Dracula in the chapel, on the chapel floor, which is where Elizabetha died. And she kisses him, and he actually is the one. He begs her to give him peace.
Yeah.
So she stabs him with the sword, all the way through the heart.
She pushes. Yeah. Well, she pushes. She pushes the Bowie knife.
She pushes it through.
Yeah, she pushes it through.
The burn disappears because she had that wound previously.
Yes, he put a wafer, wasn't it, on her head when she was trying to seduce him.
Yeah. And the altar, the cross repairs itself. As Dracula
she says
dies.
He begs her to finish him off, and she takes out the thing and she cuts his head off. Yeah,
because he becomes youthful, doesn't he? His face he turns back to the prince.
Back to the prince, and she cuts his head off.
And that's the end.
Yeah, and that scene was so. Initially, she didn't cut his head off.
Oh right.
So she stabs. She finishes him off with the blade, and then it cuts to the boys, sort of thing, and her going off with thing. And apparently he showed it to for fuck's sake, George Lucas.
Right.
He said he showed it to his friend George Lucas, and George Lucas said, "Why don't you have her cut the head off, like to make it properly final?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Actually, that's a good idea." So he went and refilmed the end. He added the decapitation.
I think it needs it actually.
I think it's a better ending. It's a perfect ending.
It's final that way.
Yeah, completely that. It's completely that. It's done and dusted and final. There's I would say there's no coming back from that, but Hammer horror.
Well, Hammer is a different thing. As was Universal, to be fair. I mean, Dracula.
Dust,
Dracula came back quite a few times for Universal, so
yeah,
it's not just a Hammer thing.
No,
yeah, Hammer did it much more extreme, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, he's literally come back from ashes. But yes, so that was Bram Stoker's Dracula from 1992. Yeah. A wonderful film, despite its janky acting in places. It's a gorgeous film to watch.
As I said earlier on, it's more of a gothic romance than it is a horror.
I
really.
agree completely.
You know, it's probably should have picked a more horror movie for our Halloween.
Hey, we're not done.
But I don't care.
We're not done.
No.
There's another. We've got our review show next week.
Yep.
And then the week after, we got one more horror film before Halloween. We ain't done.
And the one we've picked, we could say it's actually linked to this movie. And again, not as horror as some people would like, but
true.
That's what we've chosen.
We have picked what we're doing, and we're doing it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this movie.
You know, I love everything about this movie. I think
I wish it had stronger actors. That's the only, you know, and I mean only Keanu and Winona.
That's it. It's only them. Everybody else is amazing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, they are.
And there are little things like, you know, Gary Oldman and Winona Ryder really hated each other, and just little things like that. And Gary Oldman never wanted to play Dracula. He had no interest in it at all. He just picked the role because he wanted to work with Coppola.
Well, fair enough. He makes a wonderful Dracula, though.
He's so good.
He's really good for someone that doesn't want to play it.
He completely throws himself into the role amazingly.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, it did stupidly well. This movie, it kind of saved Coppola's fortunes. You know, it helped get him back on track. And like I said, he genuinely wanted to do something different. He wanted to sort of sever all the ties that all the other, the Dracula in the suit and the Widow's Peak.
I think it stands out to me. This version of Dracula stands out as much as Nosferatu stands, aside from the other Dracula movies.
I agree.
Very different. While telling the same story effectively.
And although, you know, Christopher Lee is still my favourite Dracula.
Yeah.
Gary Oldman, and it comes, you know, so close.
It's a wonderful performance.
It's almost like the holy three of Lee Lugosi and Gary Oldman are the holy three Draculas.
Yeah, well, fair enough. And
I suppose, you know, Shrek as well, really. Max Shrek, sort of, you know, even though he's not strictly speaking Dracula, but he fucking is. It's such a wonderful film.
It really is.
And I know people hate the whole romance angle, but
I like it. The thing is, there are so many versions of Dracula. I don't need another. You know, it's something different, and that's fine. Like, it's fine for me.
And I, you know, I think it has the reincarnation thing has been overdone, but it wasn't at the time. I don't think. Not this particular story. And I mean, look how many movies this influenced afterwards.
Yeah, I mean I guess Nosferatu had done it, but that was about it, right?
Yeah. So the
Dracula movies, certainly movies named Dracula, had not, I don't think, particularly done it, or not much anyway.
Mm-hmm.
When did the Jack Palance one? Does that do that? I can't remember now.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
It's been a while since I've seen that.
It's been a while. Yeah, I was just thinking that, so I might have to rewatch that.
That's actually a pretty good.
Yeah, I think I watched it after you mentioned it. I was like, oh, I don't think I'd ever seen it, so I ended up watching it and liked it.
One of the more faithful adaptations.
Yeah. It's a really good version.
Yeah, and as I said, again, this is one of the most faithful adaptations, despite its
artiness.
Its artiness and its changing of certain bits. It's still closer to the book than almost any other Dracula movie.
Yeah, I love this film.
Yeah.
And I think that Anthony Hopkins had the best fucking time making this movie.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. It looks like he's having so much fun.
I think he probably, of the actors in it, I think he looks like he's having the most fun.
Oh, God, yeah. I'm sure I'm sure that he improv'd quite a few scenes in this.
Yeah.
And people just like, well, I'm not going to argue.
Do that. Coppola said, you know, was willing to, if the actors wanted to do something, and he thought it worked. He was willing to have the script rewritten then and there to reflect that.
And that's really cool.
And I think Hopkins and Oldman did a lot of that themselves. They said, "What if I do this? What if I do this?" And he's like, "That fits. Let's do it. Let's literally write it now."
Absolutely, yeah.
And there's some great there's actually footage of Gary Oldman and Coppola arguing about the way certain scenes are done, which is quite funny. Because I think at this point in Oldman's career, he was quite arrogant.
Sure.
He was quite, because he was top of his game here.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He knows he's fucking good, and I think he himself admits that he was a bit of an arrogant prick in this life. And I think he was going through a divorce as well, so I think his private life was a bit up and down. So yeah, I think he himself says that, but what a fucking performance!
It's incredible.
So good. And again, influence other performances later.
Absolutely.
So many things have riffed off this movie, and I mean, obviously, it's been parodied to
yes,
high heaven, but still, I think one of my favorite adaptations of Dracula.
Yeah. But yes, so that was Dracula 1992. We will be back next week with our usual review fare, and then we'll be doing another horror movie before Halloween.
We will.
But until then, take care, stay safe, and we will catch you next time.